Hello everyone and welcome back to my show. It's Tuesday afternoon and I've got some catching up to do with what I've been reading. It's been a few days, I think, 4 or 5. I was reading Point Fantasy, Brog the Stoop by Joe Boyle, and I was describing this last time as being completely alien, but halfway through humans do turn up, it turns out. And the story kind of goes downhill from there, which is a shame. It becomes a bit fighty and a bit kind of less unusual, to me anyway. Still enjoyable, but it was not as good as the other point fantasy that I read a couple of weeks ago. I moved on to Ocean, I think it said Vuong, I'm not sure. Vuong. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, which I've heard lots about from various people in the last couple of years, and thought I'd read it a while ago, and actually it kind of eluded me. And then it was in one of my book bags and then turned up in this month's mystery bag, so I got to it eventually. It's if you hear it described, it's a kind of poetic literary novel, a gay novel about a Vietnamese boy and his mother and grandmother. And I'm going to pick off the sticker while I'm talking. That's obnoxious, isn't it? Picking off stickers. I got this in a charity shop for the really good price of $1.99 in hardback. It's quite new. And it was obviously donated by the person who reviewed it for the Times Literary Supplement, because it has her post-it notes inside saying, page 238, title drop at last, she says. And then a copy of her review from the TLS, which I've not read yet, actually. I'll see what I think. I've heard people talk about the gorgeousness of the writing. Some vloggers actually talking about loving this book. I think it's interesting. I think it is gorgeously written in places. I think it's got really important things to say. And only a handful of vivid scenes, though. For a full-length novel, it hasn't got that much story. And this is my problem, I suppose, with, quotes, poetic novels by poets. In that they don't move forward. You get glimpses of scenes, and you walk all the way around scenes, and you return to themes and ideas and moments, and it's the intercutting of these, rather than a kind of forward momentum plot-wise, that's behind these books sometimes, and that's what we've got here. And the kind of literariness is in its arrangement, in its playing with language and images, and plaiting together things like ideas about animals. There's this whole kind of repeated theme of the veal calves and how they're treated, and this terrible thing about monkeys' brains. So the treatment of animals and the repeated theme of the mother's body and how he's directing all of these letters to his mother, and talking about theorists like Roland Barthes, who wrote about his mother and about the role of the mother-son dynamic in his work. There's a kind of love story at the heart of it about a boy that he is together with as a teenager, and there's some kind of exploratory sex scenes that are quite brutal, and the brutalizing of this other boy who grows up kind of homophobic and denying his queerness and become addicted to painkillers and getting into heroin. All of that stuff is quite harrowing, but again, we get the story as a fait accompli. This has happened to him, and here's some kind of arabesques describing how he came to be like that. The suspense we get tends to be in little short hops. There's a scene where they first have penetrative sex in a shed at night, and it's suspenseful in lots of ways. In the, how what's the aftermath going to be? And there's a scene with his mother in a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant where he comes out to her, and then she, in turn, tells him about being forced to have an abortion. Again, harrowing and suspenseful for while the scene lasts. And that's kind of it. These are short hops into kind of narrative suspense. Mostly it's about the arrangement of the ideas and the language, which is pleasurable enough in itself, and the book is quite a quick read for all of that. I'm sure it's something you can go back to and get more from, perhaps. I like the stuff about Vietnamese culture that maybe wasn't as familiar. Some of it's quite harrowing. The stuff about the ritual of the monkey's brains is really horrible, and I have read about that elsewhere. But on the whole, I'm giving it probably 3.5 out of 5 to go back to my daft star system on this reading. When I give those kinds of ratings, it's all about pleasure. It's not about my sense of the quality, kind of literary quality of a work. I don't even know what that means anymore. I can sit and list all the effects it has and all the tricks it pulls. For me, it's got to be, at this time in my life, about the pleasure that I derive in the reading of it. I've given up kind of giving any kind of definitive review of anything, like, unlike the woman writing for the TLS, whose job it is to come up with some kind of transcendent view that will speak to other people. I don't care who agrees or disagrees with me. I know what I enjoy, and that's enough for me at the moment. There's an interesting bit, my favourite bit of the whole book is on 186, when he's talking about writing. And this is a very kind of literary novel thing in that it dips back and forth in the time scheme, and we're clearly meeting a later, very under-fictionalized version of the narrator and how he uses his life to write fiction. And the unfairness that he encountered as somebody of colour in the kind of literary establishment in America. I think it's probably better there than here, perhaps. They have generally less snobbery, I think, in that culture. I don't know. They will tell you that great writing, quotes, breaks free from the political, thereby transcending, quotes, the barriers of difference. Oh, before that, sorry, I'll go back. They will tell you that to be political is to be merely angry and therefore artless, depthless, raw and empty. They will speak of the political with embarrassment, as if speaking of Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. They will tell you that great writing breaks free from the political, thereby transcending the barriers of difference, uniting people towards universal truths. They will say this is achieved through craft above all. Let's see how it's made, they'll say, as if how something is assembled is alien to the impulse that created it, as if the first chair was hammered into existence without considering the human form. Now, that little homily really hits home, and it reminds me of all sorts of moments at universities that I've worked in and been at in this country, to do with how craft and technique in fiction were talked about, and how fine writing, I've been sarcastic about people's ideas about fine writing were. And I was very aware of people who came and did courses, and in fact writers who came and talked about their books, who could write finely and were clever and did all the right things, but they had nothing to say. It's a big problem with an arts and culture and a literature and a literary culture in which there are unfair advantages for people from fancier, richer, more middle-class backgrounds. You will get people who can look as if they're the part, but they have bugger all to say, and their books seem full, but they're quite empty. And here I think he's tapping into that, and the way that that kind of privileged cohort can push away those with something to say by telling them that their work is artless, depthless, raw, and empty. To quote Ocean there, that being political and being angry and being heartfelt is somehow wrong, that you have to step away from those things, be cooler, and use craft to universalize your experience. Now, any gay writer knows about people telling you that you can write about your funny little experience, your marginalized experience, but the true writer must become more universal. It's such a lie. When they say universal, they mean it must become more like the ruling elite. It must be more like white, middle-class, heterosexual people. That's what they're talking about. That's what they see as universal. And I love his anger about that. That the accent on craft and technique being all. Back at UEA, as I said before, there was this fetish about craft and technique and a decrying of talent, of the idea of talent, as if talent was the bourgeois affectation. And I love the image he gives it here, as if the first chair was hammered into existence without considering the human form. Well, that's funny as well, isn't it? Because it's the whole modernist lie about art, that's the only thing worth studying. That was something that was really prevalent in university courses in the arts in the 80s, 90s and 2000s, I think. The idea that, stories that had no story, music that had no tunes, and art that didn't look like anything were the only things worth studying. And of course it's not true. There's a place for all of these things. Being cryptic and looking as if things are finely wrought or are just complicated for their own sake, that doesn't mean it's any guarantee of value or quality. Sometimes you just need things to be said plainly and with some passion, I think. Having said that, having drawn that from this book and with great glee, I do find that he fancies things up a bit and plays literary games of the kind of Jeanette Winterson kind. I was very much reminded of her in places where he slips between different times and whops in, quotes, fascinating facts from, science or history or whatever, and literary criticism, and whop those things in to give it some kind of intellectual heft. Well, I didn't think he needed that stuff really, but again, who am I to say? So 3.5 out of 5 for that one. And now I've stepped outside of my writing bag again for Benton and Hawthorne Investigate by Lucy McCall from Candy Jar Books, which is a small press coming out of Wales. Now, this is, it needs explaining. I saw this advertised online, and it's because of my Doctor Who fandom and addiction. These two characters, Miss Hawthorne, the White Witch of Devil's End, and Sergeant Benton, who belongs to UNIT, the United Nations Intelligence Task Force, in 1972, come from Doctor Who, and they come from a story. Well, Miss Hawthorne comes from a very particular Doctor Who story, The Demons, which is my all-time favourite. And last night, in a fit of seeking comfort viewing, I watched the first 2 episodes again of The Demons. This is a sequel to that story in that it takes Miss Hawthorne and places her back in the unit milieu. So for a while, for the 6, I think, stories of this volume, she becomes their magical advisor in the way that Doctor Who is their scientific advisor. Presumably the Doctor's off having adventures with Joe Grant somewhere in the universe when help is required. And I just sat down this afternoon to begin this with this in mind, this blurb at the back. It's Agatha Christie spliced with dark magic and infused with that warm nostalgic glow of the 1970s Doctor Who target novels, which is perfect for me on a sunny day, although it's not so sunny now. I was tempted just the other day to return to those mid-70s Doctor Who books in a fit of nostalgia, even though I could just about recite them off by heart. Clearly I'm after some comfort reading. But picking this up did put me back in that world. And to have Miss Hawthorne investigate and do things like go to the local library, go to the church and look at the parish records, start suspecting that the librarian is probably a witch because of the ring she wears and the nasty looks that she's giving, and staying in some kind of shabby hotel and eating terrible food and pretending that Sergeant Benton is her nephew, and getting involved in spooky hijinks in the early 70s. It's so up my street, I can't tell you. So well done, Candy Jar, on this, and I'm glad I ordered it online from their website. So I've got this next. I've still got a few books left in the book bag, the mystery book bag for this month. It's still May. I think we have, I don't know how long, more than a week of May left. I intend to put some decent time in reading. I think I could do with a break from all the bits of work I've been doing. Good. I hope everybody's well, and I hope you're getting some time to read. And next time, hopefully, Socks will come and talk to you. Because it's late in the afternoon, he's on my desk chair over there sleeping. Although at the mention of his name, his eyes opened slightly, suspiciously, as if he was going to be after some cat food or something. Do like and subscribe down below, and I'll be with you again quite soon. Hopefully, with some kind of book haul. I fancy a trip out, perhaps. Although, I really don't need to fill this house with any more books. Anyway, goodbye. I will see you again quite soon.